point, it was kind of that environment where I didn't believe it could happen. But I think now what's really exciting, I know for Kimon also, is that he actually has clients that are that are paying him money to make some of these things come true. So with that, Kimon, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Dake. Actually, clients like Ned, so thank you very much. So I'm an architect, started BIMStorms. We have our own software called the Onuma system, also the chair of AIA TAP for 2013, and I've been involved with BuildingSMART Alliance and BuildingSMART for many years. I want to get one thing out of the way before I start here is architects are at the center of the universe, so just keep that in mind. So the theme is about connecting, sharing, and collaborating. It's a very exciting time to be here. A lot of familiar faces. We've been pushing at this for many years. I want to present this from a perspective. I wear many different hats. So I'm an architect. I'm also a software developer. I'm involved with the AIA technology and architectural practice, but involved with BuildingSMART pushing standards, and have been representing and are representing owners right now through NIBS on several projects, which you'll see as we go along. And I also have another hat. I'm kind of looking what's going to happen 10 years down the line. So we're going to have a dialogue between these different hats. And I'm going to get a lot of people mad probably, but that's okay. I want you to kind of challenge me on things. So the world has changed, as Deke has been saying over the last few days. And it's an exciting time, but it's also a time that I think we should kind of reflect and see what we need to do. Three other words that I really like are agility, being lean, and also I work a lot in the cloud. That's obviously, as we're working with our smartphones and everything, that's kind of the natural place where a lot of this is all heading. Disruptive technologies is the innovation part of this is we're all innovators. We saw yesterday about crossing the chasm and everything, and I've been very frustrated over the years as far as innovation goes in the building industry. We have this kind of evolutionary approach that's been happening from a lot of parts of the industry, but we really, as BuildingSMART, we are disruptive. We're looking to change things. So how do we go about doing that? So innovation. Fast and faster. The world has changed. We expect things a lot faster. We expect them at our fingertips. We expect no less than that. This is a great quote. If you don't cannibalize yourself, someone else will. This is Steve Jobs. So I think that we have to constantly think in those terms. We can't be comfortable where we are, even if we're innovators. There's others that will run us right over, and hopefully if we work all together, it's where we all want to be as BuildingSMART. Services-oriented architecture. How many of you are familiar with this term? Okay, not enough of you. You'll learn more about it as I go through this. So a 5.9 earthquake hit near Richmond, Virginia. Residents of New York read about the quake on Twitter 30 seconds before they experienced the quake themselves. Pretty amazing. Thomas Suarez, 12-year-old app developer. He's developing apps on smartphones, on iOS. He spoke at TED. This was actually an article in Forbes. We will all be software developers. And you probably said, well, we didn't all sign up for this, but we will. If 12-year-olds are developing software, 12-year-olds are the people that are going to be working for us or already working for us. So we have to think in those terms, because software development, as a software developer and as an architect, what's really intrigued me, architecture is about pulling things together. We're the center of the universe again, right? So we're pulling stuff together. And in software, you have to kind of think of the logic to build a software. The technology itself is kind of the mechanics, but actually understanding what the rules are and the interfaces is actually more difficult than the actual coding itself. And that's where the architecture part comes in. So we will all be software developers, and you'd say, well, no, we don't want to do that. Well, a few years ago, we never thought that we would be typing our letters to people. You know, we had somebody else typing stuff for us. But now we're directly involved in the creation of information and the communication of information with others. We expect the technology to work, nothing less. In the last few years, imagine, we used to use maps, right? You open up a map and you had to read all the layers and you had to find your little roads and read all stuff. That's no longer acceptable. In fact, people get upset when a three-dimensional map like iOS fiasco with the mapping software that they had, that you couldn't find the nearest Starbucks or whatever. or that this three-dimensional view, this is actually a comment on this three-dimensional view on the Apple map, that this London wheel is missing the spokes and missing the carriage. What's going on here? Something's broken on the map. So we're expecting real-time access to information and nothing less.
Hi, we're the Smart Platforms team. Our mission is to foster and accelerate innovative health applications, and here's how we're doing that. Many experts agree that health software moves too slowly because innovations are not easily adopted into the workflow of a clinician's day. One aspect of that is inevitable. Hospitals are 24/7 mission-critical operations. You can't go upgrading software willy-nilly. But another aspect doesn't have to be the way it is. There's no reason electronic medical records have to be monolithic and siloed, where it's an all-or-nothing feature set, and writing new applications that get at the data is inherently difficult. Think about the iPhone and Android platforms and the tremendous innovation they've generated. The reason is simple. You can easily add a to-do app, and if you don't like it, you can try another one, and at any point you can switch back. It's your choice. And because developers write to nice, clean APIs, and they can focus on making the feature particularly good, competition is fierce, and in the end, the user wins. We're working to create the same kind of innovation environment where, in the end, the patient wins. We're doing it with open web technology. Imagine a great web developer who's designed a beautiful way to visualize cardiovascular risk using HTML5. This app takes data from the patient's record and combines it with controls that let the physician show the patient, here's how your risk is affected because your blood pressure is high, you smoke, and you have family history of heart attack. Now here's how you can improve your health by quitting smoking and bringing that blood pressure down. We're building the application programming interfaces and the data formats developers need to write that application once and deploy it against electronic medical records in hospitals, but also personally controlled health records for patients to use at home, and data mining platforms for researchers to explore their subjects. And to jumpstart this development, we're making available a Smart Reference EMR and Smart Sample Data, which you can use to start building apps right away. Here, for example, we look at a different patient and we activate the Smart Cardiovascular Risk app to see what their data looks like. In the words of John Halamka, CIO of the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston, imagine all the energy we could harness if our most talented engineers wrote modular EHRs instead of Angry Birds. Check out our website for more information and to get started building your smart app.
Expect nothing less. That's what the younger generation is going to expect. So we have to look outside of the building industry to what also is happening out. It's already out there. There's nothing magic about what's happening with our smartphones. So imagine if I had to take a moment right now and download my map data and my Facebook data and my friends' Twitter feeds and synchronize it with my Windows XP laptop, which I have at home. That seems ridiculous, right? We open up our smartphones, we find the nearest Starbucks, we find our friends, we find all our information. But in the building industry, that's essentially what we're doing. We're taking data out of one application, exporting it out, whatever format, including IFC. You export it as a great format. I'm completely for IFC, but it's still an export from one tool, import it to the other. Now you have it in two places, and you're worried about synchronization. Well, that's the world that we live in today, and we still are going to live in that world. But imagine if it could take snippets of data, because we're producing tons of data in the building industry, which data is king in this world, right? So we think of it in those terms. So architects, center of the universe. I was at the BIM forum in Seattle with a lot of you in the room a few months ago, and great 2 days of discussions about BIM to facility management, moving data back and forth. And there was a discussion at the end of the period. An architect stood up at the end and said, I did not sign up to manage data. And I just almost exploded. I had to keep myself locked in my seat. So let's go back. We sat around a fire and we communicated with each other. And we still do this. We're still talking to each other. The technology doesn't, it's not one or the other, it's both. We're communicating information. Then technology moved along and we're able to carve things in stone and be able to pass it on to the next generation. We have now our cities that are churning out data and information and amazing things happening with BIM. Data about energy, data about sensors, data about how facilities are managed that we're all focusing towards. But as an architect, I look at this and I say, okay, when I started in BIM in the early 90s, and I thought, this is amazing. We're going to be able to pull this all together in the next few years. Everything's going to change. Well, we're getting there. But architects are, I love architecture. I love what we can do. I love how we can collaborate and connect and create amazing places to live in. But there's a problem. We really are stuck kind of in the past. We're very protective about our information. We don't like sharing our BIMs like we talked about yesterday because it's ours, and the AIA has a lot to do. That's one thing I want to hope to change with the AIA is we really have to think about how we can share our information, because the more that we trap it in our wonderful BIMs, the less relevant we will become. The more we can broadcast out and connect to others, that's where we become relevant, and we must do that. We can't think of them as that's our knowledge, and if we let somebody take our picture, they're going to steal our soul. It doesn't work like that anymore. We have to share, and that's just a theme that we just have to think about how we share our drawings. So it's a changed world, and we must think of that, how we break the information silos, all the stuff that we're trying to head towards. BIMStorm, this is from Penn State, with John Messner's class that was involved with the BIMStorm. BIMStorm is a charrette, how you collaborate using all different kinds of tools. Things work, things don't work, it doesn't matter. You just have to keep on moving, just keep on throwing things away that don't work and keep on moving. That's what BIMStorm's been about. There's been over 30 of them. Tammy McEwen is going to be presenting tomorrow also. BIMStorm Oklahoma City just happened, and this is actually a mashup, a combination of GIS servers feeding in real-time GIS data with BIM data on top of it, with being able to do what-if scenarios with it. So this is how BIMStorms work. This is an interface on the web in the cloud to be able to collaborate with that. And we, as I use this slide a lot, I'm probably going to skip over this real quickly, but we expect this kind of ability to reserve a seat on the plane in real time, not have to print out the schedule and come back to it and figure out how to buy that seat a few days later. So there are revolutions happening. This information revolution, the end user should not be burdened with understanding the code behind how this communication happens. We just want to communicate, whatever it takes. That's the norm now. We don't want to talk about the technology. We just want to do it, and it changes things. So today's shifting landscape. When the tablet first came out, everybody thought, oh, how cute. It's called a pad. It's just a consumption device. No one's going to do anything with it. Well, it's overtaken the desktop pretty much, right? And it's moving even faster. In the last few years, nobody would have imagined that change. So we have to be part of that. We have to be part of that change. And it's happening. You see a lot of amazing stuff happening with BIM. So the technology is constantly changing. So owners, the other hat I wear, through NIBS, we're working right now with several owners. Actually, this is not a NIBS project, but the California Community Colleges working with the entire state looking at their data. They had data about facilities. They couldn't care less about BIM or IFC, but they had data about buildings. So by working with them, we were able to take and they have 2.4 million students, huge population, 72 million square feet of BIMs, essentially, 32 Empire State Buildings worth, 5,200 BIMs now. They could not wait to manage their facilities and their energy until they had 5,200 detailed BIMs. So you hit it from both sides. It's not one or the other. You need the detailed models, but you also need to manage the existing facilities. If we wait till there's all perfectly formatted BIMs, then we're not going to get to this point that we need to manage energy, and time is running out, as we all know. So they have 120,000 rooms. If you stretch them end to end, they fit the whole state. They had a database. This was very unique about the California Community Colleges, and I work with a lot of federal agencies as well. They had a consistent naming and numbering convention for rooms. Just the names and the numbers of rooms. It seems so simplistic, but if you don't nail that down, you're not going to manage your facilities. Even if you have one perfect BIM of the 5,000, you're still not managing your facilities. So we said, okay, this is amazing. You have a database in the cloud of your buildings. We can connect through web services, which I kind of described earlier. We don't want to export your data from your database into another database. We just want to subscribe to it, just like I subscribe to feeds about maps or where my friends are, or where the nearest Starbucks is. You don't import and export, so they can continue to maintain their facilities, and then you feed it back in. So you say, okay, now here comes some new facilities, let's feed them back in. So you want to be able to feed that data back in. And that's kind of what's amazing about this project. So it's been ongoing, and the most amazing thing about it actually is that now there are other software developers that use web services and open architecture and services-oriented architecture and are connecting their systems, their work order systems, or their energy systems, or their GIS systems into this. And you create this ecosystem, because if you look at the complexity and the amount of data that you have to deal with, obviously you can't do it in one tool, and you can't do it by exporting from one tool and importing to the other and figuring out how to synchronize the two. That's key. That's what's changing things. The BIM Healthcare Consortium, actually, Renee's here, and we have Russ Manning presenting this afternoon with Steve Hagen's session. As part of a NIBS project as well, they're looking at how you move data from the early planning through design and construction and then on into facilities management. This is kind of an ongoing theme in the industry. How do you move the data through? But imagine this as well too. Even if you have a perfectly formatted BIM, if on the facility management side your house is not in order and you don't have consistent way to name and number things, you're not going to be able to solve it. You have to kind of solve it from both sides. You have to create that infrastructure to build up, and then things feed into itself. So we're working with them. This is actually an invitation to everybody. We're working with this is through a NIBS project. Onuma is working with Department of Defense Military Health System, who has 77 million square feet. Department of Veterans Affairs has 140 million square feet. There's two projects. One is related to SEPS, the space and equipment planning, the programming of facilities, how that data moves into BIM. Then on the other side, they have facility management and life cycle. How does that data now move into the life cycle, into operations and maintenance? We are looking for, and this is actually on the web, there's a link here, and if anybody wants to find out more, please give me your card. We're looking at different processes and different tools and different organizations and how they work with this, and we also have a pilot test case going on in the next month and a half that we want to use COBE, we want to use BIM, we want to use other standards of how do you move data back and forth and look at best practices. What's out there and how can it work? The questions are, why should we use open standards? This is the owner's talking now. Give us a reason, an ROI of why we should use open standards, why we should use BIM, why we should use COBE. Even though everyone's on board, you have to know what the ROI is, and that's what we're exploring. So the proof of concept is about open BIM standards, BIM, COBE, BPIE, web services. We're also exploring that. And there's a website that you can actually go in there and fill in a form, give us the information, and it becomes a report that ends up going into these agencies. It's ongoing right now. Another project with the VA right now is macro BIM, working with Beck Technologies and Onuma through NIBS, looking again at planning and managing facilities or designing and planning facilities going from SEPS again, how do you program and plan that? And with Beck Technologies, we actually went through a whole series of tools. We tested IFCs, we tested COBE, we tested web services, we used BIMXML, as is, some of you know, kind of know the background of that. We tried IFCs, it was going to take too much time to actually create the connection. We actually used BIMXML and we made a connection over a weekend because it's very simple, again, simple connections. Both work, it's not one or the other. That's the other thing that's important. You have to be able to go with the flow to be able to pull it through all these different tools. Revit was used, other BIM applications were used, Deprofiler, taking it in. So a lot of different things were happening in this macro BIM project, which is ongoing right now. So as a software developer, we have our own tools. I won't go into that, but it's web-based, cloud, collaboration, connecting many different things, the Onuma system. Connects to GIS, so we're connecting to other tools that have GIS servers so you can see the utility lines as you're doing planning. Again, not one single tool. Okay, BuildingSMART. I've been part of BuildingSMART for many years. I support it a lot. I love what we're doing. We're creating a great engine. IFCs are great. I'm frustrated many times at how long it's taken. I think all of us kind of feel that in some ways. We're doing great things. We're creating this infrastructure, but we have this ship here and it's starting to float, but sometimes I feel it's like that water coming in from the edge and we're trying to get this boat going up. But I think we're at the tipping point, like was described yesterday. How do we get it there? We need that big idea, but we also need the small snippets of successes. We need to keep it simple. We also need to make it simple for other developers, other software developers that know nothing about BIM to be part of this world. It's not, you have to be BIM, you have to be IFC to connect to us. We want to connect to the rest of the world, which means we have to look at other ways of pushing data in and out. So it's not one or the other. There's a heavy lift going on about that. We tend to get very fanatical about our allegiances to software. We wear it on our sleeve many times. You know, this is the BIM software I use, and this is all we use because it's the greatest software in the world. That's great, but I mean, does it really make sense to tattoo it and say this is all we're going to use? You have to think of open standards to be able to move the data back and forth. And I say this about software, and I've used all of these pretty much over the years and a lot of other software, and I'm very concerned when I hear people say, well, this is all we use. I mean, come on, really. Even for IFC, when I say it must be IFC or nothing, I just go nuts about that. IFC is great, but there's other ways to move data. So services-oriented architecture, you saw a little bit of that. This was published, it's actually on the web, it's a public document from President Obama's office called the digital, it's written in plain English too. It's 50 pages long, Digital Government, Building a 21st Century Platform. It's about how you move, data. It talks about web services, services-oriented architecture. This diagram is in this document. There's a concept about applications can be bundled as one application. You have the data and the interface and the platform all kind of in one bundle, but they're saying we need to split the information layer out of applications. We need an information layer, then we need a platform layer, then we need a lot of different user interfaces, including that iOS app that 12-year-old's building to get to the data. And we need everybody to be accessing the same data. We don't want to be exporting a list of Starbucks restaurants in Washington, D.C. from one application and importing to the next. We want to subscribe to that data as it comes up into the interface. So it's a very interesting document to read. Data.gov, there's a presentation this afternoon with Steve Hagan that max.gov is going to be there. There's going to be a representative from max.gov, that the government's even getting into open web. Data.gov is about open data. Let's share data about cities and governments, things that are open. How do you share it outwards? Then there's also another website called max.gov that's more closed, that's a more secure type information for government agencies to share, but it's the exact same platform. It's just the access level is different. But it's the same web services approach. So this is already being pushed in the same diagram. How do you share with the public and interagency and all that? So that's going to be presented this afternoon. And this is how things are going to make it easier to collaborate. So we must, as a BuildingSMART Alliance, actually look at things like this and say, how do we connect to that? Not 18 months from now or 2 years from now. How do we do this right now? There's no time to sit there and figure out, well, let's map it out. I mean, all that stuff's important, but we have to think differently about this. So here's application A. I'm not going to even name it if it's BIM or not, but just imagine an application that has data inside it, right? And there's users that use that application. And within that data, there's ways of logging in, whether you have an access or whether you have a license. So to get to that application, then you have the platform layer that kind of ties it all together. And then you have the user interface that allows you to get to it, but it's kind of a black box. And a lot of applications actually have APIs that allow you to connect to it, but essentially you have to have a license to get to that data that's embedded in that application. That's great, but it doesn't make it very easy to share. Then you have another application B. So to share from application A to application B, you have to export data from one, import it to the other as a lot of different formats, including IFC. A lot of the IFC work that's going on right now, it's important stuff to be able to get that same common standard, which is still going to apply to a web services environment, but it's still essentially exporting IFC from one, importing it to the other. There's model servers happening as well, but this is the world that we kind of live in right now, right? And then you start getting different applications, so you have things happening going from one to the next, and then you have this in the center, a common standard IFC, very important. How do we call things out? How do we name things? That's the only way it's going to work, to be able to share between the two, the multiple applications. But imagine this kind of a world. What if we take this is what the data.gov document is talking about. Take this and say all the data should be split away from the application. The application can still function as is, but the data should be outside of it, and you access it. You access it and you have security level there, and the user interface along the top could be multiple applications, including an iPhone app. I should be able to get on an iPhone and pull up VA standard spaces or VA standard equipment, pull it from a server instead of having to go download it from an Excel, move it into another application. So that's where we should be thinking of heading. And once you do this, and this is critical for BuildingSMART, I think, if we can expose our data to more users, that's when we get the critical mass going. There really aren't enough people here. It's the same faces. A lot of us know each other. We've been doing this for years, but there's really not enough of us to get over that hump into the next level. So if we open it up like this, it's going to make it easier for more users to access the information that we create in open ways. And then you go through the life cycle. So you have the data along the bottom, you have a platform saying how you get to the data, and you have different applications hitting that data. And then you can move it across, because right now we're kind of slicing it and hopping over the silo as we go from the early planning into the operations and maintenance. So if I'm describing a space like I showed it in the California Community College, here's a room, a conference room, and I'm planning for it. When I'm in operations and I'm managing the energy in that room, I want to be hitting the same room information. I don't want to be going into two different places to find what room number am I in. So it's not a single database. It's multiple databases that serve information to many applications. And then the other desktop applications are still relevant. It's not one or the other again. It's both. How do we connect these two worlds? So I can have BIM application 1 talking to BIM application 2, talking to BIM application 3. So this world where it's publishing up the information, then it makes it accessible to other applications. But we're pretty much still focused here. This is where we are right now, pretty much. BuildingSMART, we're focused kind of on moving data this way and that way from one application to the other. Very important, but still doesn't get where we need to. So AIA TAP, we have a conference. We have a lot of things happening throughout the year, and I really invite, I'm the chair of TAP this year, so I really want to broaden, we have this theme of broadening the perspective. We are not the center of the universe. Architects are not the center. The center constantly moves as you go through a project. There's different users that touch the data. We have webinars every few months. We're involved in the conferences. We have a session this Friday called Building Connections that a lot of us are going to be at. It's at the AIA headquarters. It's a smaller group. It's kind of a more discussion group, so you have to actually have signed in to be part of it because there's not a big room there. So we have these large and small sessions, but I invite you to, if you're interested, please join us next year. So just to give a list of who's involved with AIA TAP, we have Jeff Ouellette here, we have Steve Hagan, Calvin I think is here too. So a really great group, a really great mixture. Christina's here too, I think. I don't know if she's in the room or not, but we really want to invite you all to be part of it, to look at what we're doing, but also to teach us how do we connect outward to the rest of the industry. We're collecting a list of BIM standards, so we have an ongoing, closed or open standards. There's this discussion of do we want proprietary standards or open standards? Well, obviously we all have an opinion here which way it should go, but the industry is moving in multiple directions and we want to be able to capture that, what's going on. So we have this on our website. One theme for this year for AIA TAP that I want to push is the concept of you as the architect, as the engineer, as whoever is involved with AIA. It's about you. It's about branding yourself. And again, the changed world. You, whether you're part of a large organization or whether you're a single practitioner, it's still, if you don't brand yourself, others don't know what you're doing, and situations change. People move from office to office, firms merge, firms close. It's about you. To be able to survive in this world, you have to be able to move your brand on through, which is what concerns me about how many architects in here. I kind of know all of you, but pretty much. There's not enough of us here, right? There's not enough architects understanding what's going on with AIA TAP. Just absolutely not enough. It just blows me away. But I can also understand it because it's pretty daunting sometimes when you jump in and you say, wow, what's going on here? There's a lot of stuff. So how do we open that up more? So branding yourself is going to be a theme, and the branding part is about using the right technology, using the tools, but also it's not about the tools, it's about your knowledge, your ability to put facilities together. The tools should just go away pretty much. It's about being able to connect to the information. So connect, share, collaborate. This is an animation I prepared years ago for the AIA 21st Century Practitioner, but I see information kind of looking like this. It's a swirling action, things are moving through, there's standards in the middle, and there's also this kind of cloud of data that's kind of floating out there. The data that's not part of BIM that we want to connect back into. So we want to look outward into the industry to things that are happening out there. How do we pull it in? Not how do we create a fence and say, if you're not part of this, If you don't do IFC, if you don't do this, you're not part of this world. It doesn't make sense. It has to be both. You have structure in the middle, and you have data coming in through it, and you have groups and individuals moving in and out of that center as the project progresses. It's a dynamic kind of a movement thing. It's not kind of this static chart. So to summarize, architects, this is kind of what we need to do, what I see. We have to use open standards. You have to figure out how to share your BIMs. Architects, I think, are lagging a little, not a little, quite a bit. How do we share our information? How do we share outward? We have to understand what IFCs are, at least be aware of them. We don't need to know the technical part of it, but at least know to ask for it. Join the BuildingSMART Alliance, obviously. We want more people touching what's going on here. Owners, this might piss some people off, but stop wasting resources. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And for federal owners, it's my money as well. So let's figure this out. And I know we're all trying to, all of us in the room, I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but let's get this message out there. There's ways to do this today. There's really no more time for this stuff. Let's get with it. So that's another one. Enforce BIM standards. It's also a very critical piece. There's BIM standards going on out there, but unless those standards and requirements are enforced, you're just going to start getting stuff just thrown over the fence to you as a, well, here's my BIM and here's my Kobe and see you later type of thing. So by enforcing the standard, you actually help evolve the industry too, because unfortunately there's going to be some firms that are going to fall out of the equation, and they should. If they're not part of this, then evolution should kind of take care of it. We need to move things forward. Software developers, we should use open standards. We should look at services-oriented architecture, think about the cloud. And as I know, a lot of software developers are actually getting into model servers and things and that kind of concept, but it's somehow developing into silos again. We have to connect those servers together. It's no longer acceptable to create your own ecosystem and say, come join just me. It just doesn't work. So we have to ask for that. BuildingSMART, it's about open BIM and open data. It's not only about IFC. IFCs are great. We have to think about being lean, agile, cloud, fast. We move too slow. A 2-year cycle on NBIMs, it's not acceptable, I think. We need faster ways to get the information out there. 3,000 downloads is great, but we want millions of bits of information being used. It has to be open and easy for new developers. We need to find others out there that know nothing about BIM or IFC or the building industry, but have information of buildings touch everything. So we need to figure out how we connect to those others out there and invite them in. Don't make it difficult to join us, what we're doing here. And some of you know what I'm talking about with that. Buildings are the user interface for the human race. Everybody touches it. We need to fill more than a ballroom. We need to fill the National Mall. We need to connect to everybody. Everybody out there touches a building. We're BuildingSMART Alliance. Filling a ballroom is not acceptable. We want more than that. So thank you very much. Did I go over?
Yeah, actually the luncheon is better run upstairs if you're signed up for that, because it started about 3 minutes ago. I think this is all extremely valuable, and I don't certainly disagree that we've got to move faster. We need that energy.